And bear in mind, most women who are single view it as a positive if any reasonably plausible guy approaches them flirtatiously and respectfully and has this sort of lighthearted, what my old friend Eben Pagan called cocky funny, right? Have a cocky funny mindset.
Yeah.
Like, I'm confident. This is a low stakes interaction. I'm just going to make a few quips. Like, I don't expect it to go anywhere. Women love that. And if a single woman goes to a coffee shop and no guy does that, it's a little sad. And if at least one or two guys validate her as being worth approaching, at least as a fellow human, like, that's a win for her.
Yeah.
So help her have a good day, right? That's the mindset, not, oh my God, I'm not good enough for her. I'm going to try to approach her anyway. I know she's going to shoot me down. Like, don't have that mindset.
All right, today I'm here with Geoffrey Miller, who is an evolutionary psychologist at University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. I'm really excited to have him on. I've been watching, listening, consuming your content, Geoffrey, over the last few years. Since I graduated high school, watched you on Joe Rogan, Chris Williamson. We've both written for Quillette and done some work there, both independently and various other places too. I think Sam Harris's podcast. So as I've just tried to mature somewhat and grow as a young lad, I've enjoyed consuming your very fascinating evolutionary psychology work on dating and mating. So it's a real honor and pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Rav. Great to be here.
Okay, so we have a lot of topics we were just discussing before we started here recording. A lot of different things to talk about. We will definitely not get into finish all these topics because there are so many interesting things to talk about in this brave new world of dating and mating with technology, incel culture, the online sub-communities, subcultures, trends in fashion, sexuality, and just macro level problems, micro level problems. We're going to go into some pop culture stuff as well. Look at a couple of tracks by The Weeknd and dissect some of their themes from an evolutionary psychological perspective, which I'm really excited to do. So there's a lot to get to. So let's just start off with, sort of briefly, but in however way you want. What is evolutionary psychology and why should we be talking about it on this podcast here today as it relates to young people's plight in this crisis of a lack of dating and relationships? It's a really big problem for my generation. So why should we be talking about my generation's relationship problems from an evolutionary psychology lens?
Evolutionary psychology, which is my field I've been involved with for about 35 years, is basically the study of human nature, right? We want to understand what makes people tick in terms of how they think about things, perceive things, their motives, their preferences, their values. And a lot of the evolutionary psychology focuses on the two key things that our ancestors faced: survival and reproduction challenges, right? So a lot of them are focused on survival issues, like how do we find good food, avoid predators, avoid pathogens and parasites, all of that. How do we get along in clans and tribes socially? How do we manage conflict with other individuals and with other groups? But a lot of the evolutionary psychology work that I think is most illuminating is about mating, mate choice, how we form relationships, how relationships work, what the tensions are between men and women, and so forth. So that's been a major focus of me and also very prominent other evolutionary psychology researchers like David Buss at UT Austin and many others. It's relevant now, right? You might ask, why is the behavior of our ancestors still relevant? It's because we're not blank slates. It's because we have innate preferences, and we form relationships based on preferences for traits that are not just learned, that are not just cultural, that are things that our ancestors needed to pay attention to, right, in order to get together, have babies, raise the babies, survive in a hostile environment. And a lot of those preferences, instincts, reactions to the other sex are still around, right? Modern culture is very different from prehistoric hunter-gatherer culture, but the same underlying kind of sexual dynamics are still there. And that's why evolutionary psychology has had such a profound impact on the way that people write about modern dating and mating, particularly in certain kind of manosphere and red pill communities. We could get into a lot of the mistakes that they make when they're trying to do kind of like third or fourth hand evolutionary psychology that they've misunderstood. But I think the basic foundations of EvPsych in relation to modern mating are really, really strong, right?
Okay. Let's get into some kind of bigger picture societal stuff. This is a lot of people are very concerned about this and talking about it. There's a new article in The Guardian recently titled "Fewer One Night Stands, More AI Lovers: The Data Behind Generation Z's Sex Lives." Article pointed out a lot of things that we already know. We've known for a while how we are in the middle of a sex recession among Gen Z. Gen Z are having much less sex than previous generations. 32% of Gen Z high schoolers have ever had sex, compared to 47% of millennials in 2013. Gen Z men are having less sex. One survey found 1 in 4 Gen Z adults aged 18 to 24 have not had partnered sex yet. 1 in 3 Gen Z men report never having partnered sex, compared to only 1 in 5 Gen Z women. There's also a disparity in singlehood. 63% of men under 30 are single, compared with 34% of women under 30. And the article also points some political divisions. Women are more liberal than men are. More young people are identifying as LGBTQ plus. I've tweeted about that dynamic a little bit recently. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I mean, we can spend just a brief minute. Like, my sense of that, by the way, like stats, like 20% of Gen Z are like LGBTQ plus, or like 25%. All these like seemingly very alarming like statistics. Like a lot of that, I think, is these new categories, which are very like socially constructed, like gender fluid, non-binary, vague kind of ranges of queer. Like I don't think it's a lot of like some conservatives are suggesting that this is a lot of social media or political discourses turning guys gay or women gay. While that there might be some exceptions to that, I think that's largely not happening. I think this is more of the former of what I just said, the more socially constructed categories of gender fluid and non-binaries. I think there's a massive rise in that. And potentially even with women, which we know are more sexually fluid. So maybe more women are bi-curious or bisexual or gender fluid, whatever that means. Any thoughts on that quickly?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. We know that the percentage of people who are strictly homosexual, who are only interested in their own sex, is probably less than 1% for women, and it's about 2% for men. And that has been stable for many, many, many decades, right? As far back as we have good data on sexual orientation. But what has happened is you've had a rapid increase in the number of women who identify as bisexual, right? And there's always been a lot of so-called sexual fluidity among women where, and my wife, Diana Fleischman, has written extensively about this. Bisexuality for women can be a way to make friends and influence people, right? So it's not strictly kind of a sexual orientation, but it's a method of sort of female-female bonding. Male bisexuality is really quite rare. It seems to be, down around the level of male strict homosexuality. And then you get this huge catch-all category of queer, like I identify as queer. What does that mean exactly? Does it mean bisexual? For a lot of Gen Zs, it's basically a political label rather than a sexual orientation. So if you kind of set aside the self-identification as queer, which doesn't have any crisp meaning in terms of your
Yeah.
actual sexual preferences. Um, there actually has not been that much change in the overall rate of either gay or lesbian orientation, a little bit of an increase in female bisexuality. To me, the big confusion that Gen Z faces about sex is this huge disparity between what they see on social media, right, particularly TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, and indeed OnlyFans, versus real life, on the ground behavior of actual high school and college students and young people. So the pop culture of social media would suggest that Gen Z is uniquely promiscuous and kinky and bisexual and sexually adventurous and, dressing provocatively. And that's kind of like the public facing image that Gen Z presents to itself, right? But the actual private behavior is Gen Z is having way less
Mm,
sex and way fewer relationships and is not
yeah.
nearly as promiscuous as, like, if you look at the data for my generation, Gen X, right? I was in college in the mid 80s. We had so much sex compared to millennials and compared to Gen Z.
Mm,
And this was at a time when, like, I got to college right around the time that the AIDS crisis was first hitting New York. And I was at college in New York at Columbia. And we were like, oh my God, that's terrifying. But you know what? We're going to keep having sex anyway. We don't care. Like, incurable disease that's a death sentence, right? If you get with the wrong partner, didn't phase us at all. Like, the prospect of global thermonuclear war at the height of the Cold War didn't phase us at all. So when I hear Gen
right.
Zs being like, oh my God, the world is so dire, like the world is 2 degrees hotter than it was 150 years ago. I'm like, you guys aren't facing nuclear war. You're
Yeah.
not facing an AIDS crisis. Come on, get your act together.
Has there been? I want to go back to the LGBTQ thing in a second, but you got segued into a new thing too, which is there have there been big jumps in sexual promiscuity or sexual activity in your what's your generation
Gen X,
from Gen X, and then what's after that?
millennials.
Yeah, okay. Is there a big jump between Gen X and millennials, similar to millennials and Gen Z?
I think millennials were kind of maintaining about the same rate of um, sexual adventurousness. I think it was reduced a little bit by the kind of Me Too concern about consent and date rape and all of that. That put a bit of a damper on the younger millennials in the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years. Um, but the huge drop in sexual partner numbers is mostly a Gen Z thing compared to
Hmm. Okay.
sort of millennials.
Really? So there wasn't a big jump in sexual activity from your generation and millennials?
In fact, I think it decreased a bit from Gen X to millennials if you
Yeah. Okay.
compare age to age. Yeah.
Gotcha. And just to go back to the LGBTQ thing for a second, I tweeted out the other day. I don't know if you saw. I said eventually all of us are going to be in the LGBTQ plus
Yeah.
category because
Yeah.
every day there's a new sexuality, and I mean, I would like to think this is a joke, and I don't know how many people actually consider this part of LGBTQ, but there is. It's called sapiosexual.
Mhm.
Is if you're turned on by intelligence. There's
Yep.
demisexual if you're turned on by emotional connection, and so I tweeted out, I said, guys, I'll be at the next Pride Parade because I'm probably both of those.
Yeah.
I love intelligent, attractive
Mhm.
women. Emotional connection, but that's like everyone, right? At least the emotional
Mhm.
connection. Some people like myself, who are quasi nerds, we like women who are well read. But it's like there's all the like this is all very socially constructed, and it's like
Mhm.
you go back. There's a meaningful difference between being heterosexual and homosexual, but sapiosexual is what is like that's not a meaningful category really. But yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you can expand the plus in LGBTQ plus category kind of as much as you want if your kind of political allegiance is like you must support LGBTQ rights, and so the more inclusive that category is, maybe the more support you get. um I mean, sapiosexual is At one level, it is kind of a thing. At another level, it really isn't. So the sense in which it isn't is, a lot of my research for decades has been about why exactly are most humans sexually attracted to intelligence and creativity and general behavioral competence, right? So I've done a lot of research on intelligence and IQ testing and so forth. And it's a pretty common, like human universal across cultures that when men and women are trying to choose a serious long-term partner, like a marriage partner, they pay a lot of attention to, is this person smart and competent?
Mm.
Right? It's always one of the top 2 or 3 most desired traits for both men and women seeking long-term mates across all cultures that have been studied.
Mm.
So in a sense, we're all sapiosexual.
Yep.
Men relax that standard a bit, right? When they're looking for short-term mates,
Mm.
right? So
Even
like,
long term, right?
well, no, what happens is men don't care much about the IQ of their casual sex partners. True, right? Men don't care much about intelligence if they're just dating casually. But their selectivity about intelligence gets as high as women's for long-term mating. And this is why you see married
Mm.
couples correlating pretty strongly on IQ, right? Because they're mutually selecting each other for intelligence.
Yeah, and the cues for that are like how many books she's read, having a deep conversation, alluding to historical or literary text, like different things like that.
Right. I mean, those are some ways to demonstrate general intelligence. But the magic thing about general intelligence is it is general. So it manifests itself in virtually anything that you can do that is challenging.
Yeah.
So if a uh, if a woman is particularly skilled at any traditional kind of trad wife female activity like cooking, weaving, sewing, doing good, conscientious childcare, planning social events, right? Those are all intelligence indicators. Those are all testimonies to general behavioral competence. And likewise, if a guy is very good at figuring out, like, which car should we buy? How do I maintain it? How do I fix it? How do I test this or that? How do I plug in my little engine fault code reader into the car dashboard? Like, that's all an intelligence indicator as well. So you don't have to think of intelligence as something that's only demonstrated through kind of higher education, pretentious cultural elite stuff.
Yeah.
It can be anything that you do behaviorally where you
Yeah.
could do it competently and well, or you could do it incompetently and stupidly,
Yeah. Although, can
right?
I can I
It's
can I can I push back just anecdotally?
sure.
I know I've heard intelligence being universal, being general. But for me, like I'm good at writing. I'm good at asking good questions, critical thinking. In high school I was good at math. It was okay at physics. I was not great at biology, but I'm known to be, as all my friends say, directionally challenged when it comes to navigating maps. I'm not
Yeah.
great.
Mhm.
Not and just in general, like more hands-on, practical stuff, like changing a tire, fixing something in the house is just like I'll spend hours and be like, "What the fuck? I can't just call a guy and just pay him $100 and just do it," because I'm not
Yeah.
good at it. So, like,
Yeah.
what does that say about intelligence?
Well, one of the big things that we emphasized in my old book, Mate, from 10 years ago, that I wrote with Tucker Max, that was a book of dating advice for young
Yeah,
singles,
that was a great
straight
book.
guys. Right.
I read
Thanks.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to reread it because when I read it, I was probably much more immature and just cognitively retarded when I read that. I should reread it actually.
I think it stands the test of time. I think about 90% of what we said in that 10 years ago is still valid and useful.
Mm.
Um, we had a whole chapter in that about intelligence. And what we emphasized there was uh, if you're a young man, right, you can certainly specialize in certain ways of demonstrating your intelligence, like your writing or your podcasting, your math skills, your chess playing, whatever, all the kind of nerdy, geeky stuff, your coding ability, whatever. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of young men over specialize in just a few ways to demonstrate their intelligence, and they kind of don't have enough breadth of behavioral competence. So we gave the advice that, like, you should be able to do the adulting, right, all the normal stuff that competent adults in their late 20s or 30s can do, the sooner you can do that, the better. So if you have a good understanding of cars and houses and finance and general world knowledge and how to fix stuff, it's super easy to find out how to do like basic household maintenance or how to cook. Like just watch some YouTube videos. And so the point there is, instead of over focusing on a few things that you think will be like the very best intelligence indicators that I can give to women or men, have the breadth. Because man, when you have kids like I do, your entire life is about what is the breadth of your competence, right? Can you take care of a kid? Can you drive a car? Can you plan a holiday? Can you keep on top of your social events and your friendships? Like IQ matters for all of that. And the faster that young men and women figure out, I should be able to offer the kinds of skills that will be relevant in a marriage and when I'm a parent. And that's what will actually be quite attractive to the other sex.
Mm. And just to put a finer point on the example that I gave, like being very intelligent in some areas, I would also add it, like it's not just intellectual, but say like cooking, pretty good cook. I can make a pretty nice lasagna if a woman comes over.
Cool.
But when it comes to like navigation or handyman stuff, fixing car stuff, fixing stuff in the home, like just generally, like a good distinction is like in high school I was pretty good at math, but I was not great at physics. And the difference is with physics, it's like adding more concepts, more words, and more like hands-on stuff in like labs. I was always bad at like science labs going back to grade 7. Very good at math, always straight A's in math. Science, you get B's, C's, and I even failed biology class in grade 12. So I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, of what that means in terms of like intelligence, how that seems to vary in my case from different activities.
Yeah. So certainly, like, there is a notion of general intelligence that you can measure with like IQ tests, because all the different cognitive abilities that humans have tend to correlate positively with each other, moderately positively, right? But that still leaves plenty of room for certain profiles of competence where, yeah, you're stronger at math, weaker at physics, stronger at whatever, English literature, weaker at learning French, whatever it is. Yes, there's unevennesses. But I think the earlier that young people understand their own distinctive strengths and weaknesses, right, the earlier you really need three things, right? You need very powerful ways to demonstrate the things that you're the very best at. You need a breadth of competencies that are sufficient to actually be a good boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife in the future. And then you need to know, what are my distinctive weaknesses, right? As a third category, which is where you figure out, how do I compensate for these? You can compensate sometimes by training yourself and filling in gaps in your knowledge and watching the YouTube videos or taking classes. But you can also compensate with, outsource it to technology or to other people. So if you're not good at navigating, we've got Google Maps, right, which is pretty good. And so the thing to do there
Yeah.
is, if you're bad at navigating, get really, really good at understanding how to use Google Maps, or get yourself full
Yeah.
self-driving Tesla or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
I've both, and I see. I sometimes still struggle with Google. Just like walking around, like, wait, am I going the right way? Oh, we just wasted 5 minutes going. Anyways, but yeah, there's still
yeah,
challenges even with technology.
so I think that the takeaway there is just, uh, you really need to think systematically about, what are my strengths and weaknesses as a potential mate, and how do I polish my strengths, and how do I compensate for, or
Yeah.
fill the gaps in my weaknesses.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for the advice. um, so back to we have a lot to get to. Back to the macro level trends of Gen Z. So Gen Z is by as many scientists have said, alarmingly sexless, romanceless, partyless, like going out less, having less social encounters, romantic encounters, sexual encounters. Even it's interesting, even like more conservative people are concerned about that, and I've even seen like more conservative people even say like, I rather have like a party animal friend or a colleague than a incel
Yep.
friend, or as in like they might believe in the sacredness of sex after marriage, but they socially they think it's, or psychologically, much healthier to be having more sex than being in the basement jerking off to OnlyFans and to having AI girlfriends. So in terms of I mean, there's a lot of different things to talk about here, but just um, uh, how alarmed are you by these trends, and what do you think is causing them? If that's not too big of a question to answer for you.
It is pretty alarming. I think it's very sad that you seem to have a whole generation that's just very uncomfortable talking to each other. So I think part of this is smartphones. I think it's texting. So I think when I see young people spending all of their time heads down, like I teach college students, and before class they're on their phone. I have breaks in class. They go on their phone, check their messages, check social media. They're back on their phone right after class ends. And I have a no phone in class policy, but you know, they are comfortable staring at small screens many, many, many hours a day, and they seem to communicate with each other principally through texting, which is fine, but it means they're not actually getting that much practice doing face-to-face conversation. So, back when I was in college and high school, we didn't even have mobile phones. We had landlines, and if you wanted to ask a girl out on a date, you would pick up your landline, dial the number, rotary phone. Some grumpy sounding adult, right? Their dad or their mom would answer, and it's like, "Hi, I'm Geoffrey. I'm from whatever Susie's 10th grade math class. May I please speak to Susie?" You'd have to get comfortable talking first, typically to the parents, right, and then to the girl. Make a date, get her address, pick her up with your car. We all drove, right? This is another thing Gen Zs don't seem to do, is know how to drive a car. And you go to her house, pick her up. You'd be expected to make some conversation with her parents and siblings and kind of get vetted by them. And if they knew you were going to pick up their daughter, they will have made inquiries, right? Her parents probably knew your parents, at least indirectly, right? And they would have launched a whole campaign of information seeking even before a first date, right? And then you go on the date, and it's conversation. There's no texting, there's no distractions, there's none of that nonsense. So by the time people in my generation got to their early 20s, you would typically have had dates with at least 20 or 30 different people. You'd probably have had at least 2 to 4 medium term or long term relationships. You would have had at least probably 2 or 3 sexual partners by halfway through college, and probably double that by the time you graduate. So there's just a lot more exposure to real life conversations with the other person face to face. And once you get a generation that's very comfortable on social media, but not comfortable in real life, it's hard to make that jump into IRL contact with the other sex.
One follow up on like people having more sex in college. Like, I have an interesting hypothetical question, which is, say like an incel, like your average incel now, socially awkward, has a hard time approaching women in public, probably on OnlyFans, watching lots of porn, all kinds of psychological traits and pathologies that go along with that. Do you think that incel type of young man, if that young man instead grew up in the 80s or 90s, would have been much more likely for him to get laid?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing special about, us Gen X guys being better guys. It's just the social context, and particularly the technological context, was different. I would also say there were social norms where adults supported teenage and college courtship with various social events and rituals to a degree that I don't think happens anymore. So there was a real push to do like do more extracurricular activities, join clubs in high school that meet after class, mostly for the social benefits, right? And to meet girls or to meet boys. We had this thing called cotillion when I was a teenager, which was 4 times a year. Young men and women from different high schools around my hometown, Cincinnati, Ohio, would get together. It would be a formal event. So these poor, embarrassed 15, 16-year-old boys would be in full dinner jacket tuxedos, right? The girls would be in basically ball gowns. And, you'd have a DJ, you'd go to the country club, you would get together, and the boys would line up one side of the room, girls on the other side of the room, and you would approach. You would basically practice a cold approach. Guys would walk all the way across the dance floor, ask a girl to dance. About 50% of the time, she'd say yes. Then you dance the next song. But 50% of the time, nope, not interested. You slink back to your side. And it was almost like cognitive behavioral therapy to get over approach anxiety, right? It was an engineered social situation that forced young people to practice both, doing the may I meet you kind of thing, but also dealing with public sexual rejection in front of all your peers. You just get used to it, right? You habituate to it. You burn through that discomfort. And I think a lot of those social events and kind of rituals and norms have evaporated. And parents have failed Gen Z to give them the kind of guidance that would be really helpful in this domain.
Okay, you brought up a lot of things that wasn't on the menu of questions, but it's so interesting, and I think about it all the time, so we can get into it a little bit more. First of all, about the incel thing again, like incels have always existed, right? It's like 60s, 70s, 80s, like they're like, can you describe a little bit like that phenomenon? Like even in when the social environment was more conducive for sexual and romantic experiences, there still was some underclass of guys, even when you were in college, that had wanted to get laid but had a really hard time getting it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing to contextualize here is, there's 6,000 species of mammals, and for 70 million years, most mammal males in most species have been incels, right? The vast majority of deer and wildebeest and gorillas have been incels, right? You get a polygyny mating system where the top males, who have the greatest dominance and formidability, right, and fighting ability, tend to monopolize most of the females. And that's absolutely typical for most mammal species. So a lot of the young males in almost every mammal species are just kind of moving around on the periphery of where the females are. They can't attract any mates. They don't hold any territory. They're probably not going to reproduce at all ever. Or if they do attain high dominance rank, it's temporary, maybe for 1 or 2 mating seasons out of a 10-year lifespan, right? They're getting mates. And the rest of the time, they're incels. That's even true for gorillas, right? So humans are really unusual in that we have these multi-male, multi-female groups that we live in, clans, right? Hunter-gatherers live in clans. And we do mutual mate choice, and we don't actually do that kind of polygyny. We mostly form pair bonds, and we form them pretty early in adulthood if you're a hunter-gatherer. So basically for a few million years, right, from about 3 million years ago when we first evolved pair bonds until quite recently, most males and most females were finding mates by their early to mid 20s. And there weren't that many incels compared to now. There were still some. There were still some guys who were such kind of dumbasses or losers that nobody wanted them. But most of them could find at least some female partner because most people were mating, kind of in a pair bond, kind of monogamously. And it's only in the recent decade or so that it's almost like we're returning to the mammalian default, right, of kind of polygyny. And the dating apps, oh my God, the dating apps amplify this to a very
Yeah,
high degree, you know.
we'll get to that. Yep. But here's an interesting question: how strongly do you think incel status, incel behavior? How strong do you think the correlation is between incel status, incel behavior with attractiveness as a male?
I think it certainly is somewhat correlated, but I think what tends to happen is, and I've seen this so much in the last 10 years, I've been tracking this, and it's tragic. The incels think that women only care about height and money. Now, it is true that on dating apps, it's very easy for women to filter for self-reported height and self-reported income. And those are a couple of the first things that they use to filter out guys.
Mm.
But those are
Although the very popular apps like Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble, they don't have an income. They don't ask you about how much money you make.
they yeah, I'm not sure about that actually.
Yeah. Those are like the three most popular ones these days.
Yeah, and I used OkCupid quite a bit back in the day, 10 12
Okay.
years ago.
Okay. I don't even know what that is.
Okay, it is still one of the top 10 dating apps.
Oh, really?
It used to be awesome. Like 10 years ago, you could answer thousands of questions about your traits and your preferences.
Oh,
It's kind of it turned super woke though before the first Trump election.
Okay.
But what you do get is, I know with regard to height, right? A lot of women are saying, I want a guy 6 feet or taller, which is effing stupid, because the average height of American men is 5'9", 5'10". 6 feet plus, you're selecting out 85% of guys.
Yeah.
Right. With that one question, you're limiting your pool to 1/7 of what you could have gotten otherwise. So that's a completely retarded thing for women to do. And likewise, if they are selecting for,
Yeah.
income, and they're saying, I want a guy in his mid 20s who's making 6 figures. Oh, good luck with that. That's like 2% of guys in their mid 20s.
Yeah.
So
hit me up, ladies. Hit me up in the DMs. Let's go. So we got that Substack money. I'm just kidding. Well, not kidding, but also kidding. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
okay.
Got to get my Substack up and running. So, long story short, I think what's happening is the dating apps are biasing the way that mating is working, and it's pushing young women to use very superficial selection criteria, because the young women are getting overwhelmed with matches and overwhelmed with DMs and too much interest. So they just want to filter out, right, as many guys as possible. But they're filtering on the wrong stuff. They're filtering on superficial traits. And then the incels react to that, and they're like, women are superficial and dumb and materialistic and heightist and whatever, blah. And then they get frustrated. If an incel could spend even a week as a woman on Tinder and experience what the average woman experiences, I think that would completely flip their perspective.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot there. And dating apps were on the list of things to talk about. A lot of questions there. But again, with the point about how strongly do you think incel behavior is correlated with attractiveness? Like you hear that a lot with young guys. Like, it might not even just be height. Just like, my face just doesn't look great, and that's why I can't get laid.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of cope. There's a lot of sort of black-pilled pessimism that is premature. And in the mate book, we told young guys, look, if you get in shape, if you just take care of yourself, you do some aerobics, you lift heavy, you do some sprinting, you get in decent shape, easier than ever now with Ozempic, right? If you understand how to dress, how to wear clothes that fit, how to present yourself in a way that is like Mr. Right, good potential future husband material, right? Not sleazy playa, but like, this is a good guy. He is stylish, but not faddish, right? He has good taste, but he's not super trendy. If you just get that stuff sorted out, right, and you can Avoid relying on dating apps where women are just filtering for very superficial facial features or height. You can do fine. Like it's not that hard to be in better shape than most people of your age.
Yeah.
Speaking as somebody who's 60, who's in better shape than most 60-year-old guys, right? Um, you can do that. And then everybody is, you know, every
But
woman
by the way, good for
focuses.
you. I would have not guessed 60. I would have guessed probably 10 years younger than that. So
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
keep it up. Diana
Well,
chose wisely, maybe.
I spent a lot of time chasing my toddlers around, so
Okay. Yeah.
that keeps me
Yeah.
flexible.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, long story short, I think a lot of the incels are using all these excuses and all these copes. They're like, oh, there's something messed up about my nose, or like my hair is stupid, or
Yeah.
what, and then they're not doing the stuff that they could do that could massively improve their relative mating value.
Yeah. 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 And I want to go back to like if you have any other like causes for this crisis of sexlessness, relationshiplessness. But this incel thing, like, man, like I have talked to so many young guys, and without going into specifics, but I've multiple guys recently I've come into contact with through various means, and this is not unique to one or two or three or even four cases, but multiple cases where it is really sad to see. And you have these conversations, and yeah, I haven't approached a woman in like a year, 2 years, and I totally empathize with this. Like when guys say like, last time I approached a woman, she just gave me this dirty look, or she called me creepy. She thought I was weird, and that just completely discourages them, and they don't do it for months or years after. And they're interacting with girls on OnlyFans as a replacement. Yeah, it's really sad. And it's I think there's the like it's there's this balance of having empathy versus also encouraging a sense of personal responsibility. Like you could be doing some of these things better, um, but there is a lot of fear. I'm seeing a lot of
Yep.
fear of approach anxiety, and I've some friends, and I'm not I wouldn't call myself a lady expert, but one of the things I'm good at is just having the balls to go approach women in public, coffee shops or gym, or certainly in raves, nightclubs, just, talking to different women. And not to say that I haven't had nerves, but I tend to be, just for whatever reasons, better with dealing with the fear of like, oh, wow, that girl, she's really cute. Love to go talk to her. And there will be sometimes some like, oh man, like, yeah, she might say no. She probably might say no. I saw her with a guy earlier. I'm not sure. But you could say 8 times out of 10, I'll go and make the approach. Whereas I have friends who are more, 3 times out of 10, they'd go make that approach. Like, oh, that girl's really cute, but she's going to say no to me, and that's going to fucking suck. I'm way too scared. And I saw that guy earlier. What if he beats me up? Like, so that can be really challenging. A lot of fear to approach.
Yeah, and I think there's some, I wouldn't call them mental tricks or hacks, but there's some legit ways to become more comfortable with talking to women. One thing we emphasize in the mate book is like young guys can just use women who work in the service industry as just very gentle, brief practice. So if you're going to a coffee shop, just chat a little bit with the female barista, right? Don't come on to her, don't ask her out, but just practice at least one or two sentences of banter back and forth, right? And if you approach it with a non-sexual vibe, like I'm just a guy, imagine what would I do if I was an extrovert, right? What would I do if I was just James Bond flirting with a barista, right? That makes the stakes much, much lower, and they're kind of obligated to flirt with you because they want tips, and so they can do it. Or approach women with the intention of, I want to be in the friend zone. I actually want to be your friend. I'm approaching you with a view towards a possible non-sexual friendship. A lot of these incels have zero female friends.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
they don't even think, oh, building up my female friendships is a path towards getting a mate, right? They think, oh, if I have female friends and they're not sleeping with me, I'm a failure and I've been friend zoned, and that means I'm a loser.
Yeah.
They have completely the wrong attitude towards it.
Yeah.
Even just
Not to say that the friend zoning doesn't suck. If that
right,
happened, that can suck. But 100% having female friends, and like even the benefit of like going out to a club and with your
yep,
female friends, right? That signals to other women, oh, that guy's not creepy. That guy's not a predator. He's got some female friends, so
yeah,
that guy must be cool.
yeah. And then right, and exactly. And if you make friends with, uh, it's easier to make friends with a beautiful woman than to get a beautiful woman to date you.
Yeah.
But beautiful women tend to have beautiful friends. And if you are a good friend to the beautiful woman, she will vouch for you and
Yeah.
introduce you to her friends. Right. And so it's just using the power of the social network to extend your kind of your reach, right, into the mating market. And the other thing I think a lot of incels get caught up on is they think, I need to have the kind of confidence that like a rap star going into a club would have in terms of approaching women. And that's the wrong way to think about it. Like that's expert level extroversion. You don't need that. All you need is a little bit of so-called day game, which is like, how do you approach women in daily life during the daytime when you're going about your activities? You're going to classes, you're going to work, whatever. Approach women there when it's not noisy, it's not crowded, you're not the poorest guy in the room, you're not the worst dancer in the room. That makes it a lot easier. And I think this is a big error of the original pickup artist scene, was the extreme emphasis on meeting women in bars and clubs. You don't need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Just go to a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym and start rolling with the men and women there and make some friends and make
That
some
doesn't sound
female
like the
friends.
greatest place to meet hot girls, to be honest.
No, it is actually. There's a lot of
Really?
good women doing jiu-jitsu, doing MMA,
Really?
doing
Well, yeah, I
or
actually know a couple. But yeah.
go to a CrossFit gym,
But that's going to be like what? Like if you go to a jiu-jitsu gym, like how many women? Like 30%, maybe 20%?
yeah,
That's
30%. But
that's not a
CrossFit, I
lot.
think CrossFit's probably
Okay.
more like 40, 50%. And then yoga is going to be 80% women. So
Yeah, yoga. A lot of guys I know going to yoga now. And for it's good exercise, but they otherwise wouldn't if it was a sausage fest. But because there's women there, another place to meet women. A lot
yeah,
of guys are doing that.
yeah. And again, if you go to like a yoga class with the intent that I'm here to do the activity and
Yeah,
learn about it, I'm here to make friends
yeah,
with women. I'm not here to get laid. I'm not here to get a date. I'm here to make friends with women. That will lead within months to you being introduced to good potential girlfriends. Like that will happen. But you just need like a few weeks of patience.
yeah, yeah. And since we're on this, we can bring up some of these points I'd written down for things to discuss. But first of all, what you reminded me of is just how I have, as a friend pointed out to me, I've fairly strongly gamified approaching women for some of my friends who struggle with it more.
Mm-hmm.
And I take your point about nightclubs and bars not being the only place, but like coffee shops are actually a pretty good place. You know, going to a coffee shop, especially if you're a remote worker, as I am, something that I've implemented in my life over the last several months. Is instead of working at home, just go to a coffee shop 4 or 5 times a week, and just like when you're in lineups or you're sitting down and you see someone putting the sugar in their coffee, and like I've had multiple very positive interactions and gotten phone numbers and like Instagram, and a couple of times even like this one girl about a month ago, she came in and she was working beside me, and she had to use the restroom, and her laptop was their very expensive laptop, and she's like, hey, can you just watch my stuff? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no problem. And then she comes back, and then we have like an hour and a half conversation about Jungian psychology and mental
Mm-hmm.
health and things like that, and that went really well. And so just being in a coffee shop is a pretty good place, I'd
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. And bear
Um,
in mind, most women who are single view it as a a positive if any reasonably plausible guy approaches them flirtatiously and respectfully and has this sort of lighthearted, what my old friend Eben Pagan called cocky funny, right? Have a cocky funny mindset where
Yeah.
like, I'm confident, this is a low stakes interaction. I'm just going to make a few quips. Like, I don't expect it to go anywhere. Women love that. And if a single woman goes to a coffee shop and no guy does that, it's it's a little sad. And if at least one or two guys kind of validate her as being worth approaching, at least as a fellow human, like that's a win for her.
Yeah.
So help her have a good day. Right? That's the
Yeah.
mindset to have, not, oh my God, I'm not good enough for her. I'm going to try to approach her anyway. I know she's going to shoot me down. Like, don't have that mindset. Right? You're just there
Right.
to have lighthearted fun and banter. And
Yeah.
if it leads somewhere, great. If not, it's great practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, not to say like I want to be like mindful and fully acknowledge the people who are like thinking like, no, these guys, they're not acknowledging all the pitfalls and risks. Like, yeah, like, you know, for me, like there have been cases where you go up to a woman and sorry, I have a boyfriend. Sorry, I'm actually married. And like, and that's inherently awkward, right? That's weird and that sucks, but there's no way of putting that risk at zero. There's no way that you can know from just looking at
Yeah.
a woman that you want to approach. There's going to be women that are taken, and that's not like, you know, life ending. That's not like she's not like, okay, she's taken, but like maybe she thinks you're cool. You know, not enough to, you know, get rid of her boyfriend, but it's still, you know, she might appreciate it nonetheless.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be awkward. It can just be like, oh, that's cool. Good for you. He's a lucky guy.
Yeah,
Thanks for letting me know.
that's a good follow up. Always, he's a lucky guy. That's a good response to give. Um, I have my own sort of recommendations. I didn't want to turn this podcast into like actionable dating advice, but that is cool. We're kind of getting into that. For me, I like visual cues. So like when guys sometimes are like, what do I go say? Like, oh man, she's really hot. Like what do I do? And it's like a really easy one, by the way, is tattoos, but bracelets, necklace, shoes, any like clothing item, typically clothing items. But like recently I was in, you know, Singapore and I was at this Jurassic Park place. And a couple of these attractive French girls were there, and me and my buddies, we were there, and I'm like, oh, we should go approach them. And then my buddy's like, oh no, we're not going to do that. And they just ran away like fucking pussies. And then you guys suck. No. And then I went up to one of them, and she didn't even speak English, and I just said, oh, that's a really pretty necklace. And then her friend kind of translated. They were both French, but the one actually spoke English. And right away, she just starts smiling, like, "Oh yeah, oh, thank you, cool." And "Oh, you're from France. What are you doing in Singapore?" And "Oh, I'm from Canada." And "Oh, I'm a podcaster. You're working marketing. Oh, cool. All right." And then we go out and then we have dinner with them. Then we go to a nightclub after and have a fun time. And so like stuff like that, you know, picking on cues. I imagine you would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, bear in mind, if you can just, you don't even have to comment on the woman's own clothing or accessories or glasses or whatever. It can just be commenting on the local ambience or other people around
Yeah,
you, or
100%.
like, you know, commenting on the coffee or the food or
Yeah,
the decor or whatever. But if you're
definitely.
commenting on a woman's appearance, then try to focus on things that she made conscious aesthetic choices about, right?
Yeah.
Not her face or her boobs or whatever,
Yeah,
that
yeah, exactly.
she had no control over how those grow. But like, if she's wearing a necklace, she made the choice that morning to put that necklace on, or she
Yeah,
wears it habitually and it means something to her, or like every single
yeah.
choice that she makes
Or a
about her
tattoo.
appearance, her tattoo, right? I love watching Ink Master with my wife, which is all about tattoo artistry, even though we have
Okay.
no tattoos. Um, and you know, it can actually be worthwhile for guys to like learn a little bit about female fashion and jewelry and even makeup. Like, most guys can't even tell, is she wearing makeup or not, and they have no idea whether it's really good. But if you can notice, like, oh, cool shade of you know, eyeliner or whatever it is.
Really? You'd recommend that?
Spending an hour watching makeup tutorials on YouTube actually would level up most incel guys
Nice. That's
more than
hilarious.
watching any random hour of
Andrew
dating
Tate.
advice.
You're watching Andrew Tate.
So it's better than that. Yeah.
Yeah, really? You would? I wouldn't have thought of that. You think commenting on a woman's like eyeliner or like makeup could be a good move?
If it's yeah. If it's dramatic enough that it shows real, like
It shows that you really took notice, right? If you're in the lineup at the
yeah,
coffee shop and like, hey, nice eyeliner, like that. That means you were looking very carefully at her.
yeah, you're
Which is
observant,
yeah,
and you're not just looking at her boobs or her face, right? You're actually looking at.
yeah,
It shows perspective taking, and we emphasize this so heavily in Mate. What is her life like? What did she do that day before you met her? What choices did she make about her appearance? If you can just do a little bit of that perspective taking, it's hugely reassuring to women, because it means, number one, you're probably not a psychopath who can't do perspective taking, and number two, you're kind of interested in her as a person rather than just as a body.
yeah. And in terms of like, you said commenting on the ambiance, what's happening at the restaurant and bar. That's always great too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, it smells really nice in here. Or man, that pepperoni pizza, oh, that's to die
Mm-hmm.
for.
Yeah.
Or you're at like a park and like, oh my God, wow, that tree is, wow, I've never seen that before. Wow, wonder what that is. That can like
Yeah.
strike up conversation too. Like if you're like near someone and like you make a comment and then she'll be like, oh yeah, I wonder what that is too. Yeah, I wonder, I might have seen that somewhere else, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can have a conversation that way.
Yeah. And it's very unthreatening. Like and it immediately creates this bond where, like, I'm talking with you about a third thing,
Yeah,
right? That we are sharing an experience of in the park or the coffee shop or whatever, rather than just, it's two of us looking
right.
at each other and like, you are the topic of conversation. Make the topic something other than
Yeah,
just, the person you're
yeah.
approaching.
The nightclub scene is interesting, and I was saying earlier I've fairly gamified that scene for my friends, and to a
Mm-hmm.
degree for myself, um, where I'll give friends various kinds of quotas to fulfill, which some
Mm-hmm.
of them hate, but some kind of appreciate at least the principle of it. Of people who tend to have a hard time approaching, like, all right, hey buddy, so tonight I'm going to be with you. Let's do 3 today. Let's approach 3
Mm-hmm.
women tonight. And that can be kind of helpful. Sometimes, usually though, my friends are like, 7 women? Come on, man. I'm like, dude, come on. That's light work. You got 4 hours. You can do 7. That's not.
Yeah.
It's actually not, because especially not all of them are going to be long. Some of them are just going to be just utter rejections, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what fuels the fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, the risks are 100% real, and they suck. Like, I was at a club in Barcelona last year with a friend, and he goes up and approaches this woman. Pretty solid approach. He said something. I forget what he said, but it was a solid approach, and she right away was like, just like,
Mm-hmm.
didn't even dignify his approach with any verbal response. Just straight up like, just get away from me. And so that sucks. But I find just like the principle of exposure therapy, just voluntarily confronting that which you are most afraid of, which Peterson talks about a lot. That kind of mindset can be helpful. And even if you don't have friends, like I've, again, I tend to be more on the extroverted side, more willing to kind of
Mm-hmm.
approach. But like this year, one kind of learning curve or risk was like going out solo, which probably to maybe most guys listening that might sound terrifying, and was terrifying for me, because you're going there and like not having a sense of like support or like some kind of like foundation, or like because when you go in the nightlife scene, it's very chaotic. There's all kinds of crazy things happening. There's women of different varieties, and maybe someone's having a fight over here, or someone's making out over here, and oh, this girl, she was with this guy, now she's with this guy, and oh my god, they were making out, now they broke up, and like all this stuff. But I've found actually a lot of benefit, and initially in mentally kind of reframing, like, hey, I'm gonna go out tonight. I'm gonna maybe talk to 5 or 6 women. I'm gonna enjoy my drink. I'm gonna enjoy the music too. And I think this started of like one time a friend just didn't want to go, and I was like, why do I need a friend to go? And so I went out, and I actually really enjoyed it. And the reason why I enjoyed it actually was I built up some level of confidence already, which I know is not going to be there for all guys, and it's easier to go with a wingman. But there was this sense of like spending less time brooding over or like discussing, like this can happen when you go out with your friends and like your buddy gets rejected and he's back, oh my god, she's such a fucking bitch, like she said yes to that guy and that guy's such a weirdo, she didn't say yes to me, like what the fuck, and you spend 4 minutes brooding about it. But like going solo can have its own benefits too. And I think I'd recommend that. I don't know. I haven't heard any other dating coaches talk about this, but if you're, I guess if I'm making a recommendation, if you're, totally new to the scene, and just to step back for a second, why I recommend the nightlife scene is that it is very much designed and engineered for romantic experience. So it's not weird to approach women there. Whereas it is weirder, but I would still say it's not weird to approach a woman at a coffee shop or a restaurant. But the nightclub, it is encouraged. Like that's kind of what's happening. And women want free drinks. And yeah, a lot of women are going to use you for free drinks. They'll be nice to you for a few minutes, and then after be like, get it. They'll just go off with another guy for free drinks. But nonetheless, it's a much more conducive, romantically conducive, or at least conducive to having interactions with women in that environment. And so I recommend it. And so I would recommend guys who are maybe afraid of doing that or want more interactions to go and just set like a target. Like, okay, I'm going to go out Friday night at this local nightclub. I'm going to talk to 3 girls tonight. And mentally, I'm not going to let their rejection feed into my sense of self-worth. And this is kind of, I talk about this in other areas of my podcast, just different things I'm working on and in psychotherapy and kind of inner narratives and trauma and kind of reshaping inner belief structures. But really go out with like the mantra that I use is like, my self-worth is not dependent on whether women reject me or validate me. So I have my own sense of self-worth. If I go out and approach a beautiful woman and she's not interested or maybe gives a really horrible response, I'm not going to let that define me as a man, and I'm going to still maintain that for myself. So I think those kind of things are crucial.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing I really like to emphasize to young men is the line between creepy and charming is actually quite blurry. It's not cut and dry. 2 guys who maybe even like smell differently, look differently, or wearing something different, or how they're saying it, or in what environment they're saying it, can just register completely like just polar opposite differently. One could be like, "You get away from me, you fucking creep!" Like, but the other one could be, "Oh my god, he's so cute. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll have a drink or I'll hang out with him." And so a lot of it is like how you also say it and what kind of energy you're bringing into it. So curious on your thoughts on that, and then I have another follow-up question to that.
I mean, if you really want to maximize creepiness, then the mindset is, oh, I'm approaching this woman. She's better than me. She's probably going to shoot me down. I have a sexual goal with her, and I'm inexperienced at this. That automatically gives off creepy vibes, right? The anti-creepy vibes is,
How does it do that? How does that for people who are curious?
women just have a very deep instinctive ability to sense a man's intentions and his level of risk and his personality traits. So if you're acting the way that a serial killer would act, or the way that a narcissistic sociopath would act, that might attract a certain kind of woman for a certain kind of relationship, but it's not going to attract most women most of the time. So the anti-creepy thing to do is, I'm a person, she's a person. We're going to start a conversation as 2 grown-up people who are having fun and are out, and we're enjoying life, and we are noticing what's around us, and we're noticing, details about each other, and we're going to form a conversation based on that. And you also are approaching it with a mindset not that, oh, she's cute and I definitely want to approach her as a possible sexual partner or girlfriend, but rather she looks interesting and maybe she's a
Hmm.
person worth getting to know. And I have certain standards
Hmm.
for what a girlfriend would be. Maybe she will meet those standards, maybe not, but I'm not going to prejudge based on just her appearance about whether she's um,
Hmm.
going to meet my standards. So
But what
you
if you're
have
looking
to,
for short term guys that want short term fun, where
if
it's
you're looking for short-term fun, you still have to assess her behaviorally. You still have to assess her personality traits because young dudes, if she has borderline personality disorder,
right?
right, or she's a colossal narcissist, or she's unreliable, or she's an alcoholic, drug addict, she doesn't know how to use birth control, uh, she's a blabbermouth, she can't keep your secrets. Even a short-term
Yeah,
one-night stand can ruin your life.
yeah,
you
I
have
yeah,
you have to make the assessment about these things, no matter how short the fling, right? So
yeah.
it, you can't approach things as if, oh, she's cute, so I definitely want to sleep with her. You have to approach it as, she's cute enough, I want to find out more about her. And even if I only want a one night stand, I want to make damn sure that she is not going to cause me reputational damage, that she's not going to give me an STI, that she's not going to get pregnant, that she's, not going to cause a bunch of drama in my life, my
Yeah.
social life, or God forbid, my professional life. Like, you should be approaching this with the mindset that I'm evaluating her as much as she's evaluating me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree with that. Although, from a guy's perspective, if they see an attractive woman in a bar or nightclub or potentially wherever else, um, you could probably bet like 8 out of 10 times if he goes up to her and she validates him that he would go and sleep with her after.
Yeah, and often that would be a colossal blunder.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All
It
right.
really would. It
Yeah.
like it's not worth it a lot of the time if you don't do the basic sort of background check on what kind of woman is she. And I
Mhm.
speak from plenty of bitter experience and knowing lots of male friends who have had, oh, it just seemed like a fun, breezy one night stand, and then it goes colossally wrong in ways you couldn't have even imagined.
Mm.
Right. And so
Hmm.
with experience becomes, you get a little risk aversion, and
Hmm.
you get to understand that a woman's character and personality traits matter no matter how brief the encounter.
Hmm. Obviously, they matter less if it's brief.
They matter less than if you're having a bunch of kids with a woman.
Yeah.
Yes, but it still matters enough that
Yeah.
you got to have the mindset of, this is mutual mate choice. I am assessing her, she's assessing me.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big takeaways, is just,
Yeah.
we are not one of these standard mammalian polygynous species where the dominant male will mate with any female that he can. We are a basically pair bonding species, right? And a lot of what young people do is kind of practicing for pair bonding, right? By trying to get a bit of sexual experience. But um, for the young incels out there, one hack is almost like, raise your own standards,
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's what you're recommending,
right?
it sounds like.
Before
Yeah.
you try to meet the standards of women. And once you raise your own standards, um, it helps you avoid a lot of heartache and drama. Um, B, it gets you in the mindset that I'm a guy with self-respect, and whatever girl I date or whatever woman I marry, she's got to have certain traits that are good enough for me.
Yeah. Just one follow up on this. I know you got to go, Geoffrey, but the point I made about the line between creepy and charming being blurry. There's this one guy on Instagram. His handle is it's Polo Kid, and it would have been great to play it for you, but I'll just tell you, like, he goes around, approaches women. He's like a young, I think 22, 24-year-old Middle Eastern guy. and he's often will use very provocative lines, and like he'll go to the beach or at clubs and say something very sexual. And surprisingly, and he'll post the failures. There's failures where girls are like, "Ew, get away from me." But sometimes it really, really works. Like you'll go to the beach and approach a very attractive woman in a bathing suit, and like you'll be like, "Oh my god, those titties are awesome, man! I'd love to play bongos in those." And like, and then the woman, and then like, there's a handful of videos that a lot of videos actually, where the woman to a line like that will be like, "Oh my god," and she'll start laughing, and then she'll be like, "Oh, what's your name?" Be like, "Future husband." And like she'll start laughing again, and then like, or he'll have like other some kind of, he has all these witty lines and that are very provocative, and like a guy like me looks at that, I'd be like, I would never do that. Yet that can actually be pulled off in certain situations. I'm sure a lot of that depends on the woman too, but it's like even like at nightclub, scenarios, like making such a provocative overture like that seems to work for some situations. Any thoughts on that?
I think that can work, and it can work well if you have sufficient confidence, and it seems like you're the kind of guy who says that kind of stuff and it works, right? Like my co-author Tucker Max could get away with stuff like that, right? But even he more often would focus on, let's just start a conversation and have fun and comment on what's going on around us. One crucial thing, and I might end with this note, is if you meet a woman and she's actually got some foresight, right? And she's been in a couple of relationships, and maybe she's even thinking, maybe I'll be ready for marriage soon. The way that you approach her will in the future become your meet cute story. It will be like, she needs to be able for decades in the future, if you end up getting married, to be able to answer the question, hey, how did you guys meet? Right. And if her report of that initial meeting is like, well, he came up on the beach and commented on my boobs, right? That's not as good a meet cute story as if he came up and commented on something else. So be aware that a first approach might end up being the story that takes you through a 60-year marriage, right? And you better make it credible and good and kind of entertaining. So if you show that you're the kind of guy who's got that future oriented mindset and has that social intelligence to do your first approach with a view towards this might be our meet cute story for the rest of our marriage, right? That's a very different mindset than just, I'm a desperate incel and I want to get laid. And so, I can see my toddlers are coming back from their little school, but it's been a great conversation, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah. And that's proof that Geoffrey is not just a theoretical master, but he's reproduced successfully. He's got proof of concept, and that's great. Thanks so much, man. This is great. We didn't cover a lot of what we wanted to, but we're going to do another episode at some point.
Awesome.
Hopefully soon. So we'll get into the dating apps and some pop culture stuff and fashion and things like that. So I appreciate it.
Take care. See you.